Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Reardon, and in response to lots of requests in the comments, we are making a Divergent cake today. You've also been asking for how to make a tiered cake and for a tutorial on how to make a cake with mousse between the layers. So I'm going to combine all of those requests into the one video. The cake itself is divergent to match the theme of the book and now movie, of course. And inside we have a layer of vanilla sponge cake, followed by chocolate mousse and chocolate cake for the Dauntless faction, then ice cream mousse for Candor, and a layer of vanilla cake, then strawberry mousse for Amity, and a layer of chocolate cake, then a coating of white chocolate ganache and fondant decorations. For the decorations on the cake, I have symbols from each of the factions, and you may be looking at this cake and thinking, what on earth are all those symbols all about? Well, that means you have not yet read the books. And if you don't have heaps of spare time to read, then you can download and listen to them from audible.com. They have all 3 books in the series there and 150,000 other books. And for How to Cook That subscribers, if you go to audible.com/howtocookthat, then you can choose any book you want and get a free 30-day trial membership. I must say my favourite books to listen to of theirs are the dramatised ones that have the sound effects as well as the voices, like the Star Wars ones that have the little R2-D2 beeps, so you can go there and choose a book. Okay, back to making the cake. Bake 1 quantity of my sponge cake recipe and bake it in 2 tins, 1 smaller one and 1 slightly larger. I'll put all the measurements in centimetres and inches on the website. Then repeat that with the chocolate cake recipe. And the videos for both of those cakes are on the YouTube channel showing how to make them, and I'll link you to the channel at the end of this video. While they're baking, let's make our trees. The trees are for the Amity or the Peaceful faction, and I'm making them in orange fondant. Their clothes are reds and yellows, which kind of gives them an orange look as a group of people. Roll out a thick snake of fondant and cut it to the right length and split the top in half, and then split each of those branches into 2. I think it would be pretty hard to choose a faction. A balance of all of them would be better than an extreme of 1, and I guess that would make me divergent. And then split each of those branches into 2 again at the top. If your knife is starting to stick to the fondant, rub a little bit of oil on it. If you were Tris though, and it was your choosing day and you had to choose a faction, then which one would you have chosen to hide in? Now we want to make an extra branch to stick out of the top of the tree, so roll a small branch, cut it in half at the top and stick that to the front of the tree. Then take some baking paper and place it under the branch to support it. Then split the ends of that branch a couple more times, and I made 7 of these trees all together, and they were all about 13.5 centimetres tall. Once the cakes are baked and cooled, then we need to split them into layers. And this chocolate cake recipe always bakes with a thin layer on top. It doesn't look pretty, but it tastes amazing. We'll cut that bit off the top anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Take the cake out of the tin and using either a knife or a cake leveler, split each cake into 2 even layers. Then clean your cake tins and line the base with baking paper using a little butter or margarine to make it stick. Then we need to line the sides to make them taller than the tin. If you have acetate, then you can use that like I have here. If not, then take 2 clean document protectors and put a piece of paper in each and use them to line the tin. Again, use some butter to stick it into place. Then use some tape to secure the sides of the plastic so that when we fill it up with the mousse and the cake, it doesn't expand out and make a mess. Now to make the 3 mousses. For the strawberry mousse, wash and hull your strawberries and place them into a blender or a food processor. For the written quantities that you need for this recipe and the cakes and the amount of fondant that you need, go to the website howtocookthat.net and it's all written there for you, and I'll put a link to that in the description below this video. For the ice cream mousse, measure out your ice cream and leave it in a bowl to melt. For the chocolate mousse, pour hot cream over the chocolate, leave it for a moment and then stir it. You can, of course, make just 1 mousse flavour if you prefer. You don't have to make all 3, or you could just use frosting between the layers. Keep on stirring that until it is smooth. For the strawberry and melted ice cream, take 2 tablespoons out and place it into a smaller bowl. Then for the chocolate mousse, put 2 tablespoons of cream into a bowl. Add a heaped teaspoon of powdered gelatin to each one of those and stir well. and leave those to sit. The gelatin will absorb all the moisture while it's sitting there. Place your egg whites into the bowl of an electric mixer and put the sugar and water into a saucepan and stir until it's dissolved. Then wash down the sides of the pan and add a candy thermometer. Turn the mixers on to beat the egg whites, and by the time they're done, the sugar syrup should be at about 238 degrees F. If it's at that temperature before the egg whites are whipped, then just take the saucepan off the heat while you wait. Once the egg whites have soft peaks, then pour in the hot sugar syrup and leave the mixers running for about 3 more minutes until your Italian meringue looks nice and firm like this. Split that into 3 bowls and leave it to one side, and then whip your cream up to soft peaks. Heat up your strawberry gelatin mixture until it's melted, and then warm up the larger bowl of strawberry puree in the microwave for about 15 seconds. You don't want it hot, you just want it slightly warm, about body temperature. Then mix in the melted gelatin into that and tip the whole thing onto 1/3 of your Italian meringue. And mix this in really well so that you don't have any lumps of Italian meringue. You can use a whisk for this if you like. Then fold in the whipped cream. This fresh strawberry mousse tastes so good, I could eat a bowl of it just on its own. Then place a layer of your chocolate cake at the base of the container. Try and choose one that's really flat on the top and put that down the bottom with the flat side down. And then add 1 1/3 cups of your strawberry mousse on top and spread that out evenly. In the larger tin, put a layer of chocolate cake just like we did in the smaller one and the rest of the mousse. Then add a layer of your sponge cake into each tin. Now for the ice cream mousse. Melt the gelatin until it's hot and then warm the ice cream for 15 seconds in the microwave and then mix these two together. Then combine that with the Italian meringue, mixing well until it's combined, and then fold in your cream just like we did for the strawberry mousse. Pour about 1 1/3 cups into the smaller tin and the rest into the larger one, and then add a layer of chocolate cake. For your chocolate mousse, melt the gelatin and warm your ganache, and then combine the two of them together, stirring really well. Pour this over the Italian meringue and using a whisk mix it together until you can't see any more lumps of white. And yes, if you want to, you can use milk chocolate for this instead of dark. I just like the intense flavour of the dark chocolate. Then add 1 1/3 cups of mousse over the top and add the rest into the larger tin. And then add your final layer of cake. Cover that with plastic wrap and leave it in the fridge to set for at least 3 hours. I left mine overnight. Trim the top to be level with the cake and add a cake board, and if you don't have one, cut a circle out of thick card and cover it with foil. That will be fine. And then flip the cake over and remove the tin. Cut the sticky tape and remove the plastic. You could of course eat the cake just like that, but because we want to decorate it using fondant, I'm going to cover the whole thing in a thin layer of white chocolate ganache. To make the ganache, just heat your cream, pour it over the white chocolate, leave it for a moment and then stir it till it's smooth. If you put your fondant straight over the mousse, it will start to dissolve the underneath layer because the mousse is so moist. And then you'll get a sticky liquid oozing from the base of your cake, which isn't too big a deal except for if you're making a tiered cake like we are, it's going to mess it up. So with the ganache is going to give like a protective layer or a barrier between the mousse and the fondant to stop that happening. So put ganache over both your cakes and put it in the fridge to firm up. Once it comes out of the fridge, you can smooth it out and use any leftover ganache to fill any gaps. To cover the bottom tier of the cake, I'm going to make it half black and half white. The Candle faction wear black and white, and they have scales for their symbol. So cut a straight edge on your fondant and place it over the cake. Smooth the edges down and trim it at the base. Then if it's not quite centered like mine is, then use a ruler and run a knife along just to trim it up so that it's exactly in the middle. Now roll out some black fondant, cut a straight line and place that over the other half. To make our scales, cut a circle and then cut it just below halfway. Then cut a couple of thin strips of black and cut a piece for the base, the stand, and a thinner bit for the arm. Add the upright piece on the join of the black and white and then add the base and the arm. Put the semicircle in place and then the 2 thin strips going up to the arm. And repeat that using white fondant on the black side. Now if we just placed our second cake straight on top of that, the weight of the cake would squash down the bottom cake. So what you need to do is add cake spikes to support the top one, and you can get these at cake decorating stores. Put one in and mark off where the level it needs to be cut, and then cut all 3 of them to match that same height. Then push all 3 of them back into the cake in a triangle shape. If you've got a bigger cake, then you'd need more cake spikes. Put that cake back in the fridge while you work on the top one. Because we've got mousse between the layers, it needs to stay refrigerated for that mousse to stay set firm. Cover the top cake in light blue fondant, and using a powdered colour and a dry paintbrush, brush on some yellow followed by some orange for a sunset sort of effect. Roll out some white fondant and cut an eye shape out. If you don't want to do this freehand, you can print out the logo and use that as the template instead. Use a little water to stick the eye onto the cake, and then use a circle cutter to mark the iris and then the pupil. Take some blue gel food colour and paint on the eyelid and the pupil, making sure you leave that little white highlight, and then outline the base and around the iris. Water down some blue colour and add some at the base and a little line under the eyelid to make it look like a shadow. Now you can place that top layer on top of the base cake, and you'll see the weight didn't squish it down at all because we have those supports in there. Roll out a thin snake of blue and add it around the join of the 2 cakes. Now add your trees. Use a little water to attach each one to the cake and then add them the whole way round. Roll out some skin coloured fondant and print out the Alegient logo. I have it on the website in the size that I used. Cut around it and then use your knife to gently indent where the fingers go. Peel the paper off and then using black gel colour paint in the outlines. Use diluted black gel to paint the shadows. Add it onto your cake between the 2 front trees. Now to me this looks like such an awkward grip, so to make it look more like hands, I'm using a straw to add fingernail indents. Now for the flames for Dauntless, the faction that Tris chose. Heat the sugar and water in a saucepan until it's dissolved. Then wash down the sides of the pan and let it boil until one area starts to go golden. Remove it from the heat straight away and mix in some yellow, and then immediately pour out half of it onto a silpered or non-stick baking paper. Then mix red into the remaining syrup and pour it on either side of the yellow, then using a knife zigzag across to combine the colours. Then drag it out at the top and the bottom to look like flames. Now don't touch this with your fingers because it's extremely hot. Take an oiled knife and make an indent right down the centre and then leave it to cool. Once it's cold, it will be hard and you can break it into shards. Reheat the sugar that's left in the saucepan and use it to coat the base and one side of each piece and glue them together. Continue to add more until you're happy with what it looks like and then add it to the top of your cake. If you want to, you can also cover the cake board in black fondant like I've done here. Subscribe to How to Cook That for more cakes, chocolate and desserts. Click here to go to the channel and see how to make the sponge cake and the chocolate cake and heaps of other amazing things. Click here to go to the website to get the recipe details, and click here to see last week's video. Put all your requests in the comments below. Don't forget to check out audible.com, and I'll see you on Friday. Have a great week.